I'm Annabelle Bright, 41 years old. I have a husband and one son. My husband is Dave Bright, 42 years old. We met through an acquaintance 10 years ago. We're close in age, and he's quite handsome. We hit it off right away. Soon after we met, Dave confessed his feelings, and we started dating. Later, I learned that he'd been attracted to my looks from the start, claiming it was love at first sight. I was quickly drawn to Dave, who was not only handsome, but also kind, and we got married after a year of dating. It was only after we got together that I found out Dave was actually the son of a famous renovation company president. Dave's set to take over the company in the future and is currently working at his father Arnold's firm. Arnold's company is well known in the industry and seems to be doing very well, leading to a pretty affluent lifestyle for the family. When I told my friends about the marriage, they often teased me about marrying into money. Of course, I didn't marry for the money. Honestly, if Dave had been the type to brag about his wealth, I probably wouldn't have married him. Sure, I was often surprised by the luxury gifts he gave and the pricey restaurants we'd go to for anniversaries, but it seemed that was just his normal. However, I've always planned on saving and managing finances together with Dave after marriage. Especially since I was raised by a single mother who struggled financially, working multiple part-time jobs, selling anything of value at home, and saving every penny to put me through college. I didn't want a wasteful life just because we could afford it. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mom worked tirelessly to raise me. But she was always smiling, and our home was filled with warmth and laughter. I've always been proud of my mom. I wanted to be a mother who could manage household finances just like she did. So, even though Dave's family was wealthy, I was determined not to rely on that and instead save money and raise our child responsibly. Dave knew about my family situation and my views on money from when we were dating, so he understood where I was coming from. However, Dave's parents didn't think highly of me. At a family meeting, Jules greeted us at the entrance and sneered at me from head to toe upon our first encounter. Following that, they pried into what my parents did for a living and the extent of their assets. It was uncomfortable. This continued at family dinners. At the dinner table, my in-laws made rude remarks about my mom like, "It must be hard being poor," and "You must be glad to be connected to a wealthy family like ours." It was clear they were unhappy with their son marrying a girl from a less affluent family. I often considered calling off the marriage, but Dave always defended me in those moments and would later apologize to me and my mom. Dave had convinced his parents multiple times that he wanted to marry me. I was worried about getting along with his parents, but I felt confident that with Dave, everything would be fine, so I decided to marry him. After getting married, at Dave's wish, we moved close to his family home. I didn't really want to live near his not-so-welcoming parents, but Dave wanted to be close for the sake of managing the family business in the future, so I reluctantly agreed. Before we had our child, I didn't have to interact much with Dave's family, so I didn't face any unpleasantness. However, once we had our child, Jules started dropping by more often, and every weekend, we started taking the kid over to Dave's parents, which meant I had to see them more often. As a result, I started to receive more and more sarcastic comments and harassment from them. When I visited Dave's house, I was expected to serve tea, clean and tidy up, and whenever I met them, they would mock me, saying I looked poor or shabby. Dave either didn't notice their sarcasm and harassment, or he didn't defend me as much as before we were married. But his parents adored our son Leroy, and would give him toys and treats, and Leroy seemed to like them, so I endured the harassment and tried to get by. I also asked Dave to start a savings account for Leroy when he was born. Even though Dave's family was wealthy, it was father-in-law Arnold who was earning as the CEO. And I felt it was embarrassing to depend on him from the start. And if something happened to Arnold, we would be in trouble. So I suggested we should earn our own living and save as much as possible for Leroy's future. Dave agreed, saying, "Why not?" So we decided to deposit the same amount into the same bank account every month. The account was in Dave's name, so I left the management to him. Honestly, I thought Dave, who was raised in a wealthy home, would be reluctant to save and put money in savings, but I was truly glad he was an understanding husband. Things weren't going well with his parents, but surrounded by a wonderful husband and adorable son, I felt happy. Then one day, something completely unexpected happened. On Sundays, Dave usually went out saying he had work with Arnold, so I would go out as I pleased with Leroy. But that Sunday, I got an invitation from Trisha, who I had become friends with at Leroy's childcare center, to go to the race course. Trisha said that she had recently been going to the race course because of her husband's hobby. And surprisingly, there was a space where children could play, and it was fun, so she invited me to come along. We met in front of the race course with Trisha and her family, and we went in together. It seemed that the main race of the day was a famous one, and the venue was packed with people. It was my first time at the race course, and the buzz was a bit intimidating. Trisha, who was accustomed to it, skillfully guided us through the crowd to the children's play area. We enjoyed the race and spent a relaxed time with Trisha and her family. At one point, I left Leroy with Trisha and went to the restroom. That's when I witnessed something unbelievable. As I walked out of the restroom and down the corridor, I saw a familiar back. Actually, two of them. Curious, I circled around to the front and gently turned them around. And to my shock, the two people were my husband and Arnold. "Hey! What are you two doing here?" And Arnold too. "What on earth are you doing?" I couldn't help but exclaim, "Annabelle, why on earth are you here?" "I just came to hang out with Trisha and bring Leroy along. They've got space for the kids to play." "But weren't you and Arnold supposed to be at work?" "No, well, that..." "Take it easy, Annabelle. But I had no idea you liked horse racing too. Never knew that about you." "What are you talking about? I'm not into it. I just came because Trisha invited me today." "But if you came because you were invited, doesn't that mean you were a little bit interested? Especially since you're putting up the money for horse racing. You might as well participate, Annabelle." "Huh? Money for horse racing? What are you talking about?" Dad, you shouldn't have said that." "What? Isn't it Annabelle who's been funding our little horse racing adventures?" Dave quickly tried to intervene. Arnold kept talking nonchalantly about the unbelievable. I had no idea what they were talking about. I was curious, but I had Trisha and Leroy waiting, and it didn't seem like a conversation that could be settled then and there, so I decided to leave and ask about it later. "Arnold, Dave, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, Trisha and the kids are waiting, so I won't ask now, but I want a full explanation when we get home." Leaving Dave and Arnold behind, I hurried back to where Trisha and the kids were waiting. Dave came home late that night. Leroy was already asleep. "You're late. Now explain to me what this is all about." Dave was silent for a while, then, as if making up his mind, he began to speak. "Both Dad and I have always loved horse racing, and actually, we go to the race course every Sunday." I'm appalled. How can you just leave Leroy and gamble? But spending time as a father and son is important, right? And we really did talk about work too. Dave was stammering. And what was that about me funding the horse racing that Arnold mentioned this afternoon? It doesn't make any sense to me. Dave was reluctant to talk about this. After a silence, I lost my patience. Fine. If you won't talk, Dave, I'll ask Arnold. Forgetting to change, I headed to Dave's parents' house in the neighborhood. Dave followed in a panic. Arriving at my husband's family home, I rang the doorbell and Jules, my mother-in-law, answered. Oh, what brings you two here so late? I apologize for the late visit. There's something I need to confirm with Arnold. Could you call him for me? Jules looked puzzled, but led us into the living room and called for Arnold. Arnold appeared in his pajamas, seemingly ready for bed. Dave, what's the matter? I want to sleep because I have work tomorrow. Dad, I'm sorry. Annabelle insisted. I can't sleep with this on my mind. I asked Dave to explain, but he didn't answer, so I came to ask you, Arnold. What did you mean this afternoon about me funding your horse racing, Arnold? That's what this is about? Oh, boy. Arnold started explaining right away. That's the money Annabelle has been saving up, and both Dave and I have been enjoying horse racing with it. What? That makes no sense to me. I haven't been saving for horse racing, and I didn't even know until today that Arnold and Dave were into horse racing. Oh, yeah. Dave did mention that it was the money Annabelle saved up for him. But really, how Dave spends it should be his choice, right? Money for Dave? What money are you talking about? I said that much before I realized. No way. I looked at Dave, but he was looking down and wouldn't meet my gaze. I grabbed Dave's arm and asked, Hey, you didn't use the savings for Leroy, did you? Dave stayed silent, head bowed. How much did you use? It wasn't all of it, was it? Tell me. Dave remained silent, still looking down. Watching Dave like this, I felt all the strength drain from my body and collapsed to my knees. We had been saving bit by bit since Leroy was born, and I had saved up at least $50,000 on my own. Then something else occurred to me. Wait, Dave, you had been saving too, right? You should have saved about the same amount as me, right? So, are you saying you used the whole $100,000 for horse racing? Finally, Dave muttered, No, I haven't saved that much. I pondered what he meant. A terrible thought crossed my mind. Don't tell me. You never saved for Leroy? Dave glanced at me for a second, then looked down again. Seeing his reaction, my anger reached its peak. This is no joke. Do you have any idea how hard I've been saving and striving to accumulate that money for Leroy? I thought we agreed it was best for both father and mother to save equal amounts for our child, no matter the difference in our earnings. That was your idea. I earn less but still managed to save, squeezing it out of our budget every month because I believed you were doing the same. And now, not only have you not contributed equally, but you went behind my back and spent Leroy's savings on horse racing of all things. I can't believe you, you bastard. I was furious, and while Dave heard me out in silence, Arnold couldn't stand his son being called a bastard. Annabelle, there's no need for that. Maybe $50,000 seems like a lot to someone who grew up poor and was raised by a single mother, but it's not a big deal. We can prepare that amount quickly. If it's about the money, I'll give you the $50,000 back. Is that what you want? This is why I can't stand poor people. Arnold spoke without an ounce of regret. Why should I be made to feel like I'm the one at fault here? As I was about to argue back, Dave, who had been silent so far, interjected. "That's right, this is typical of poor people. Annabelle is always nagging about savings. I thought having a beautiful wife at home would be relaxing. I even convinced my parents to agree to our marriage against their wishes. But after we got married, I felt suffocated and couldn't even spend money freely. It was a big miscalculation. Because Annabelle is like that, I couldn't even talk to her about my important hobby, horse racing. She's the one who created secrets between us. This whole situation is Annabelle's fault." Disgusted with the absurd family scene before me, I lost the energy to respond. Then another ridiculous person joined in. "Yes, that might be beyond your compensation, coming from a poor family. But thanks to my husband's respectable job, we never struggle with money. Our son is part of our household. Forcing him to save like that, it's pitiful for Dave. And horse racing is a cherished father-son bonding time. Trying to interfere with that, what a mean-spirited woman you must be. Whether it's horse racing or any hobby, they're communicating and bonding. I wish you'd be broad-minded enough to appreciate that." The reasoning of this family of three was entirely unreasonable. Feeling that there was no one sensible around, I gave up on further discussion. "I'm fed up. Now I clearly see what kind of people you and your family are. Also, my mom is an admirable person. I won't tolerate anyone who insults the mom I respect. I can't continue being part of your family. I will divorce Dave. Of course, I will raise Leroy. And Arnold, you must return the $50,000 I saved. I'll need it to raise Leroy. Also, pay the alimony and child support at the amount we desire. You've called me poor, yet you boast about being wealthy and not fussy about money. So don't you dare try to negotiate the settlement like ordinary people do. Oh, don't worry. I won't ask for an exorbitant amount. Unlike you, I was raised with common sense by an ordinary family. Now, if you'll excuse me." The bizarre family was clearly taken aback by my sudden tirade. Leaving the three dumbstruck, I returned home, and the next day I took Leroy to my parents' house. I was furious about what my parents-in-law had said, but more than that, I felt betrayed by Dave, whom I had believed to be a good husband and father. And as much as I was angry, I was also deeply sad. The difference in our views on money was so vast that I feared financial issues would recur even if I forgave this time. To avoid any future regret that might affect not just me but Leroy, I decided on divorce. Despite repeated attempts from my parents-in-law and Dave to reconsider, my mind was made up, and nothing changed it. Eventually, the divorce was finalized smoothly with the help of a lawyer. The compensation and child support were settled at the amounts I had wanted. Back at my family home, Mom, Leroy, and I lived happily, not wealthy, but without struggle. Then I stumbled upon shocking news. It appeared Arnold had caused problems and was ousted from his position as CEO. His company was fairly well known, so it made the internet news. According to the article, Arnold had been misappropriating company funds for personal use. He had squandered the money on gambling and clubbing. Not just my savings, but he had dipped into the company's funds as well. Days after this news, the lawyer who helped during my divorce contacted me. From what the lawyer said, Arnold had to repay the embezzled funds to the company, selling his house and land, now living in a cramped apartment with his family. In the end, not just Arnold but also his son Dave had to leave the company. Dave found it hard to land a job because he was known as the troublemaker son of a CEO. He's getting by with a patchwork of part-time jobs for now. Even Arnold and Jules have found work in cleaning services, which are open to hiring older workers. That's why they said there's a high chance my alimony payments might get delayed. Of course, I'd prefer to get the payments, but I've already received a fair settlement, and I recently found a full-time job, so I told my lawyer it's okay. A little after that call from my lawyer, I got a phone call from Dave. Expecting an apology about the alimony, I answered to hear his sleazy, cloying voice. "Annabelle, long time no see. How have you been?" "What do you want?" It's hard to say, but could you lend me some money? We were married once, right? Won't you help me out?" His nerve to call me so casually left me in disbelief. "Sorry, but I don't have any money to lend you." "That's cold. Aren't you the kind of person who wants to help someone in trouble?" To my astonishment, Dave got mad at me instead. "Shouldn't you be ashamed? Always belittling the poor, yet here you are asking for money from me, who you called annoying for always talking about savings. I might consider it if you apologize sincerely and ask nicely, but you seem unrepentant. I'm saying I don't have money to lend to someone like that. Try fixing your rotten personality first, then come back." And with that, I hung up the phone. Since then, I haven't heard from Dave again.